Okay, so here's a lighter weight, less functional, but good for if we're just going to be doing a hike where we're basically just trying to boil water and use it for drink, soup, the dehydrated meals, whatever, compared to the Trangia, but still using a meth burning device. This is from Wide Sea on AliExpress. There's a couple of different bits here. Oh, the cutlery in front here is something else I bought. You can find that from suppliers on AliExpress as well. I happened to get this from Kathmandu because it was on sale and I didn't have to wait for it to be delivered from China. So I've done a little bit of pre-preparation here. One thing I didn't notice the first time I tried to start this is that on the inside of this burner there are some marks with volumes in fluid ounces on one side, and I think it might have metric on the other. Yep, it's got mils on the other. I'm not sure why I'd be fascinated by the actual, maybe you can use it for measuring something, but there's a strong implication that some of these are fill levels. The first time I used it, I overfilled it. I've filled it to the second from highest level, which I think is 60 mils this time, which I think is going to be more successful when I actually start the burner, because if you overfill it, it flames up through the middle and doesn't burn around these holes around the outside, and the holes around the outside is the way you get some vaporized alcohol and oxygen burning effectively, and you'll see how effectively shortly. Now, in this kit, I bought a kit that came with the burner. It didn't come with this titanium heat shield, but it was from the same supplier. I've actually, the heat shield as it came, a bit taller. I've bent over the top of it here to make it fit inside, but that was easy, and probably makes it a bit easier to stand up anyway. It came with this spork that to get it to fit inside there I have to do a bit more disassembly, and I probably won't actually be using because I have other cutlery. But anyway, if you're being very minimalist and you want to only carry a spork, it has one. As part of the kit I bought, it had this, whatever it claims to be, at least so far as the fill levels. I think on AliExpress it actually specifies the fill to the brim capacities, but this has got a fill level of 300 mils. I bought an extra cup that fits inside really well, so well that I have to do a bit of two-handed fiddling to get it out. So after using my camera hand to get this other one out, this other one is 250 ml fill level. So anyway, two reasonable sized cups, so the two of us have got something to drink out of, and the capacity of this thing is 650 mils to the top fill marker on there. So if I get some water and light this thing, and set up the heat shield around it before I do, because you really don't want this thing running without a heat shield. If it was actually out bush, we'll see what we end up with. So okay, we have some water. I didn't show you this magnificent stand trivet arrangement. Okay, turn the light off to make it a bit easier to see what's going on here. It's still burning in the center and not around the outside. I'd hope that by not filling it as high, it would get the vapor around the outside sooner, but apparently not. So it's going to take a little while to get going. I won't bore you with watching it. This is after a couple of minutes. You can see it's starting to flicker from those holes around the outside. I haven't put the water on to boil yet. Of course, honestly, I don't think it's much heat into it until it does start to burn properly, but I'll put it on now. Okay, after about another 5 minutes, still not a lot happening here. It hasn't managed to, here we go. I know from the first time I started this that eventually you will definitely know that it started getting some serious energy out of that fuel. And starting to see that blue glow. Here it comes. So after that very slow start, I think we must be up to something like, yep, 10 minutes from when it was lit. A bit more. This thing really gets going. So you can see. I'm sure some of that is the time it takes to heat the fuel in the container, so there's some vapor, but I think some of it's to do with the level the fuel's burnt down to. I don't really think the burner's terribly well designed. Now, the Trangia burner seems to be a little more sensibly designed, shall we say. It also comes with this cover that with sufficient practice you can not do that. You can drop over it when it's burning from a height and snuff it. I'm not quite sure how to put this thing out, particularly with that trivet standing on top of it. So I think the answer's going to be that you don't. And you need to carefully judge the volume of fuel. Perhaps I can snuff it out, at least on this flat surface, by actually inverting the cup slash pot over it. I'll try anything once. It might be easier with a cup than a pot, because the pot handle gets in the way if I'm going to try and do that. So, assuming I put it out when I don't have a cup full of whatever it is that I've heated up, I can probably do this, or demonstrate how to start a bushfire. So that wasn't entirely what I'd call a success. To The good news is that the heat shield doesn't seem to be hot. I can pick that up, and whilst this has been getting hot sitting there, I can yeah, no, that's too small to fit over. This is too small to fit over there, so obviously it's not going to work. Trying to flick the standoff's probably not going to work either. So if I mess around with a few more hot objects, pour the hot water back in here, try using the large container as a snubbing device, discover that that also doesn't fit over the stand. So no part of this can be used to actually put this out, which is a little undesirable at the very least. Yeah. And I really can't get this off easily with the tools available, although I might have slightly more success if I try something. No, I'll succeed in lighting a piece of match. No, there's not really an obvious way of leveraging this thing off. Perhaps one at a time would work if I start with the one that's on top. I'll stop trying to use a piece of wood because that wasn't really the most genius approach. Can I get this one off? No. I'm sure a bit of bent wire, maybe some care with the multi-tool pliers might work, but it's certainly not designed as a for stopping it once you've started. Now the fact this multi-tool weighs about 10 times as much as the lightweight cooking equipment and wasn't really purchased as a lightweight hiking accessory makes this perhaps not quite the solution I'd like to use, but let's see how we go. Just a few seconds. Hope the ground's as flat as the top of the barbecue is, and hopefully you can put it out that way. Yeah. I think the idea that the fuel stove is supposed to be safe is possibly not entirely true if using this as supplied. I'll have to come up with a better solution. There is pretty convincing evidence that this actually is titanium, looking at the colour changes after this thing's been hot. Despite the other criticisms about the burner design, it does seem to have burnt pretty cleanly. The bottom of the pot, once it's cooled down and stopped going pretty titanium colours, isn't terribly sooty. So I'm actually surprised at how clean burning that was. This little demonstration of what little bit of fuel left in the bottom, aided and abetted by a match, we'll do on top of the barbecue. I'll suggest why it's a bad idea to spill this if you're camping somewhere dry with anything around that's likely to burn. Got a few things laid out here for comparison. The overall Trangia setup, so the two saucepans, the frying pan, handle for it, the burner, it's actually useful caps and things, weighs 650 grams. The collection of bits I was showing you today with the cutlery the frying pan, see, slash plate, comes to 450 grams. So, yeah, it's a worthwhile weight saving, and it's also more compact. Now, I didn't really like the burner. What I might do is use the Trangia burner. This trivet fits the Trangia, so I'll do a bit of an experiment, check to see that it does actually result in a more effective, faster boil, and probably less fuel use from memory. Certainly when it was operating with the overall Trangia setup, it did. I should point out, if you're not familiar with Trangia, that when you set this thing up properly, it does use the beautiful camera work. So the burner is sitting in here. The surrounds up on top, the pot, and all done. If you're using frying pan, you flip this out, lets the flame spread out further, there's a bit more heat in it, works like that. Frying pan also works lid. This overall, with these ventilation holes down here, you're supposed to face this into the wind so that you get airflow through there. This is completely sealed up the top, so the air's coming in from down the bottom. Overall, the whole setup produces a pretty effective with that. So I set up the Trangia burner. You'll see there's no massive flames up the side, but it's pumping out a bit more heat, I think, than the it's burning the way a Trangia burner usually burns, and started doing so within maybe 30 seconds of lighting it, which is pretty normal. Doesn't seem too badly affected by not having the stand. Okay, well, we're still waiting for the Trangia to boil the water, basically because I think we've proved that the Trangia works because of efficiency, and it's not efficient without the surround and the pot filling up the space. So it got close to boiling, and it sat there simmering away for quite a few minutes. It may eventually boil, but it's not fast. So there's a reason why a Trangia is the size and shape and everything it is. I think I'll still use this thing that once it gets going roars away and inefficiently boils some water. It'll be fine for a short trip. Obviously some of the weight savings are arguably compensated for by having to carry more fuel. I don't realistically think that for the duration of trips on planing that's going to be a big factor, but at least it's more compact than the Trangia is, and certainly more compact. I mean, the reality is if I take Trangia, I'll take mugs anyway. It's kind of, it's a waste having the Trangia if you're just going to use the dehydrated food. Trangia is great if you're actually going to be cooking.